Alright, so one last thing in terms of these projections that we have been planning to do but haven't got around to yet are all of these edge improvements. So how are we going to do it? I think let's just, in our DMP base, import a texture, and we will import our DMP edges 01 frame 50, and let's have a look. So we can see that here we have all of our edges for the entire painting that we have added. And what we're going to do is we're going to select this base matte material, and we're going to duplicate this blend, and into input 2 we will plug in our two projections, and into input 1 we will plug in our edges. But first of all, in the edges, let's change this to camera, object space to world, and select our projection camera, which is projcam frame 50. And let's connect this to input 1. And then let's connect this blend to the base matte. Okay, let's have a look. Let's zoom in a little bit and just select this bit. So we can see that our edges are being added on, but they look slightly odd. They look outlined. And the reason for that is because down here in our texture attributes, we have pre-multiplication enabled. So let's just turn it off. And now we are getting these nice additional natural edges. However, currently, I'm just projecting them to all of the same geometry that everything else is projected in. So if I change the frame, we can see that they vanish because they have slid and they are now projected onto the background. And they are here too, but we can't quite tell. So how do we fix that? Well, let's go to our geometry, and what we will do is we'll create a new context, and we're going to call this edge geo, and we'll just create some polygrids. Let's move this. Okay, and let's just bring this down into view. I think here, let's zoom out. Okay, and let's make this bigger. And we have to refer back to our concept image to see where we changed the edges. But I will just do a couple from memory, and then you guys can take over with your own work. So I remember there one being here. And what I'm going to do is straighten this out to 90 degrees. And here move it into position, like so. Okay. And actually I think here we can split it into several, just because there is a little bit of difference in parallax, and this is close enough to the camera that we might be able to see the difference. So let's just move this one here. And this one here. And another here. Oh, whoops. Let's expand it like this. Okay. So now let's go into our, which group are we using here? Geo all. And in the inclusion rule, let's include our edge geo folder. So here, I've already done this. We are including everything that is in this folder. So all of these little adjustments will appear in the render. But what we want to do is, here let's go to our edges, and I'll want to, just like with the jets, to add a clip mask, just so we can tell better where we are positioning these. So let's go back into our jet engines, not jet engines, sorry, our, where have I put it? Oh yeah, in base, our edges, and here let's create a reorder node, and we're going to call this edges clip, and plug this into the input, and here we are going to change all the channels to alpha because we rendered this with an alpha, so we can use that as a way to cut out these edge shapes from the polygrids. So let's go to our edge geo, and let's select all of these and go to the clip map and select our edges clip. And so now we see here we have these edges clipping based on the alpha. So what this does is it makes it really easy for us to visualize and position these exactly where we need them to be. So this is a little bit off. This is more correct. Okay, let's go to this one too. Okay. And if we look here, the edges and the projections now work together nicely, and we are getting these slightly more complicated edges here. So let's just repeat this process where we take copies of this and say put them in different places where there is some edge work that we have done. So let's just take this and let's see. Okay, I think down here. Okay, yeah. If I just move this to interact with this. Yeah, here we can see that I've painted a little bit of a distortion on the edge. And let's just have a look at that spot. Okay, yeah, we can see it, I believe. Okay, let me bring in the rest of this geometry that I have already made. Alright, so now if I select all of these, and I have made a bunch, but it's still quicker than modifying all of this geometry to add the extra detail. And we can see here, for example, that we are getting these sort of slightly more complicated shapes on the edges. And this really helps add that little bit of extra detail that we want. So let's carry this across to our other render layers, just so it is consistent. First of all, let's go to our DMP distant. And we can see, because this uses the same geo all group, that the edges that we have added are clearly working fine. And because we haven't applied any new material to it, everything in this render layer is getting the same material applied to it, the distant matte. It works quite well, because we have painted it with that in mind. Let's have a look. Yeah, okay. It's all there. So let's go to our most crucial passes for this, the main of which is our Z depth. And we just want to make sure that again we have the Geo All group selected. And now we will be able to render out our z-depth with all of these modifications to the edges added. And it's a little bit of an extra step, but it makes everything look much better. So for whatever render layers that you have that you think these will be essential for occlusion or things like that, make sure you add it to the same geometry group in the inclusion rule. And that sums up these edges. They're very simple to make, and they enhance your work quite a lot, but it's something easy to miss because it's a small detail. So next up after this, let's move on to creating some VDB fog, as well as creating some cables. We will be recreating them from the ones we had in our concept, but we will be doing them in 3D this time in Houdini, and the fog will also be made in Houdini. So let's move on.